channel. My name is Lisa Alistway, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. My guest today is Robert Manni. Robert is the host of the twice weekly primetime Guy radio show on NBC's KCAA radio in Southern California, and the author of the Guy's Guide to Love. I will be linking his podcast, his YouTube, and website down below for your reference. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. What a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's mine. Would you like to add anything else to the bio that I introduced you with?
No, I think that's fantastic. You mentioned all the right pieces. My novel, which the book is a novel, The Guy's Guide to Love. It's been called the male successor to Sex and the City. So it's a fast, frothy kind of rom-com summer book, but told from the perspective of men. And also you've got the podcast, my YouTube, and my terrestrial radio show in Southern California, Guys Radio, and my website, Robert Manni, MANNI.com.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about all the trends and issues related to dating in midlife and beyond. And one of the things that really prompted me to do this topic was because I was looking at a Pew Research Center study that was published, I believe, in 2019. And it stated that 50% of adults are not looking for a relationship. And they're also not interested in casual dating. That's half of adults. And so I thought, wow, okay, so they're choosing to be single. It's not like they can't find somebody or what have you, they're choosing it. So can you touch on why that has shifted and changed so much in our society? Because if you go back to previous generations, that was like priority number one, marriage, love, family. And now it's like people are checked out.
You know, that's interesting. I'd be curious as to the age break there, but because I think there's a difference between the 20 to 40 and 40 and above in that. But however, though, it seems like that's a lot of Netflix time for people because they've got to be doing, I guess it's a lot of living and they're doing a lot of stuff in their free time. But it's interesting. What's interesting to me there, Lisa, is that they're not interested in dating. It used to be, well, maybe I don't want a serious relationship, or so people would say, I just want to be dating. But usually dating is a path towards a relationship at some point, unless for most people, it says, I just want to date, meet people, and then we break up, and then I meet people, and then we break up. It seems like you want to get into some type of relationship, even though you don't want to put the pressure on yourself or on somebody else to say, this has to be a relationship. But still, that would be kind of the goal for people nowadays to say, I don't want to date. I don't want a relationship. Wow, that's 50% of people. I guess they have a lot of activities. They have a full life, or they've just said, I don't want to do anything right now. Maybe it's a response to the pandemic and the economy and just the fact that there's so many angry people out there and everything's so chaotic right now. It's tough for a lot of people. So maybe that's their reaction. I can't speak for everybody, but that's what it sounds like to me, that there's multiple factors going into that. And also, I would guess that the reaction and the response is different based on the age bracket of those who were interviewed.
Yes. And I know, like, you know, there's special instances for people who are midlife. They're known as like the sandwich generation. They're kind of sandwiched in between caring for their older parents who are aging, caring for their young children or teenagers that are still living in the household. So dating and love and relationships, casual dating, those just don't become a priority when you're that sandwich generation.
Well, I would think that would be the opposite, that if you're in that generation, so you're not caring for your elder parents, you don't have kids per se, or young kids that you need to take care of, that you might have an opening there where maybe you want some time for yourself and do some inner work or travel or whatever. But also that seems like for a lot of people, since the divorce rate is probably around 50%, that'd be a good time to date and establish new relationships and meet new people and have some fun, because there's so much unfun stuff happening nowadays that, you know, meeting new people and having a relationship could be the spark of really having a more positive outlook. So that's a little curious to me that the sandwich generation would not want to be dating, because if you're older and you're taking care of older parents, maybe you don't have time to date. If you're younger and you have young kids, you're in a relationship, or you don't, or maybe you're not, but you have to take care of the kids. So it sounds like nobody's dating anymore.
It really seems like that. I don't know if you're on TikTok. Are you familiar with TikTok?
I'm familiar with it. I don't, for my brand, if you will, I haven't participated in it yet. There's enough stuff, but yeah, I'm totally familiar
Yeah,
with it.
it's more for the younger. So if you are 40 and up, I do, you know, it would be a good idea to get on TikTok to just kind of see how the younger people are looking at relationships, because the way that they're talking about it on TikTok, you would think that they're never going to get together, that they have some type of, I don't know if it's like misogyny or misandry toward each other. There's just like this tension between the sexes, and they're just not interested in dating. And so I think that 50%, statistic from the Pew Research Center. Now that means 50% are, but there's that 50% that just are not interested for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, it's still a lot. It's still a big number. I don't mean to be plugging here, but I wrote my novel, almost a decade ago, The Guy's Guide to Love, and I really was inspired to write it because I saw a growing chasm in communication between men and women, that they really weren't getting each other or making an attempt to get each other. And I want to write a book that gave women kind of a peek behind the curtain into that weird, odd world of modern men and their dating habits, and showed flawed men and strong women characters and in the story format. But it's interesting that you're saying that the chasm has grown even wider, and that men and women are not, making inroads in terms of getting together. And it's more they're going their separate ways. And I find that very sad. And I hope we can help out so people will see that there's good things about socializing and dating and the opposite sex. I think one of the issues is, Lisa, is that technology can be our friend or our foe. When I started online dating, it was a process to learn about it and how it worked. And I realized that technology changes, and even with my book, but relationships and human nature doesn't change. So the same, if you use technology in a way to still be a human being, but use the technology to make things happen faster and more efficiently, that's great. But I think what's happened with the generation that grew up on dating technology only, like back in the day, I had to go to the bar and say, hi, my name's Robert, can I buy you a drink? Or you had to approach a woman. I had to have a conversation face to face. Now, a guy can sit at home in his tidy whities and contact a lot of really beautiful women and maybe go back and forth. And by the time they get to the point where they're going to meet in person, that puts a lot of undue pressure, or things fall apart before that standpoint. And they think that living in the digital world is really living, and it's a pathway to connectivity. But really, to make a connection with people, you need to be face to face at a certain point, because you'll agree, like, we're doing Zoom right now, and we've all learned how to do the Zoom culture for business or whatever, but people even communicate even differently on Zoom. Nobody interrupts one another. Somebody speaks and everybody says nothing, and somebody speaks and everybody's quiet. Where if you're in a group of people, everybody's talking at the same time often, right? Or talking over each other, and it's just a different dynamic, but it's not a negative. Whereas if you're on Zoom and you start talking over the other person, it's considered a negative, where in person, everybody's having fun and just chopping it up. So to me, if you're going to make a connection, you've got to do it in the real world, in the offline world. And no matter how smooth you are in the online world, in terms of dating and your real game is the offline world. When you meet a man or a woman face to face, that's when it gets real.
Yeah, people who are like boomer generation, Generation X, they can remember a time before computers, before technology, before online dating. So they can refer back to what that is like to communicate like that. But for the younger generation, they're just straight Instagram, direct message, and that's it. That's how they communicate. Nobody has social scripts anymore. They don't have sexual scripts. They don't know how to communicate with each other. And in a lot of ways, dating is a complete mess.
It's true. And, I think I think my main point is that human nature doesn't change. So if we are respectful of ourselves, we learn how to love ourselves, and then we can put ourselves out there and think about, okay, who am I? What is it that I have to offer? What is it I want? What are a couple of deal breakers? And then can I get to know this person? Because when you're just doing it virtually, it's visual for the guys. It's like, is she pretty? Hi, hey. you're hot. And that's not how, if you really want to get to know a woman, you got to do better than that. And you have to put yourself out there. And I think young men need to step up and really polish their social skills in an authentic way. That means being confident but not arrogant, and treat themselves and treat women respectfully. And that's how you develop some type of rapport where you can get out and date and have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you mentioned deal breakers. And that was something else I wanted to mention in this Pew Research Center study. And I can link the study down below for those who want to see it. The top 5 deal breakers that was reported was, number 1, somebody that lives far away. So you could have like your soulmate, but you don't want to drive 2 hours over to like meet them because it's just too far away. So that's the number 1 deal breaker. Number 2 is debt. People don't want to, tie up their finances with somebody else who carries a lot of debt. Number 3 was political affiliation. We see that on the, the dating apps. If you're a Democrat, swipe left, which means no. Or if you're a Republican, swipe left. Like, we don't even want to talk to you. So that was number 3. Number 4 was if they're 10 years older than them. So people more like want to be in the same generation. And then number 5 is raising children from another relationship. A lot of times people don't want to take on that responsibility, or maybe baggage or headache with exes and step families and blending families and all of that. So those are the top 5 deal breakers. Have you heard of any others that you would say would fall under those categories?
Well, I think that they're all, what you mentioned, they're all logistical, and they're probably the most unromantic list of deal breakers I've ever heard. Like, what happened to romance? I thought dating was a fun sport. These are all about, I don't want to go 2 subway stops, or I don't want a long distance relationship, or if you're a Republican, I don't want to go out with you. I mean, it's really sad that the deal breakers are so surface instead of about who the person is. My deal breakers would be, are you honest? Are you authentic? Are you kind? Are you fun? Are you funny? Do you have the same type of values as I have? Those to me are, if you don't have those are deal breakers, not are you 2 subway stops away or whatever it may be. I mean, and I've dated women who were single, and I've dated women who have had kids and were divorced, and it doesn't make a difference. Once you get into the relationship and you connect with the person, that's what it's all about. And it's sad that these deal breakers are all about logistics.
Yeah, it's almost like people are forgetting what the true definition of true love is. We just don't see great examples of true
romance.
Love. Right. Yeah, or even, romance, but taking it to another level of true love, not just romance.
I'm a boomer, and I have a friend, and he got divorced after like over 20 years in marriage, and I knew his wife and everything, and he came to tell me. And guys don't confide that much in each other the way the Sex and the City gals did over Cosmopolitans or whatever. And he said he was getting a divorce, and I said, what happened? He said, she doesn't laugh at my jokes anymore. She doesn't think I'm funny anymore. And that was so interesting to me, because that's the type of thing where it's about how you relate to the other person versus it wasn't about her cheating or him cheating. It was about communication and being having the same values and being on the same page. I just found it very interesting that the deal breakers can vary based on, I think, if you're a boomer, a GX, a millennial, or Gen Z, et cetera, and it's just fascinating. But again, human nature is human nature. So if you respect yourself and you respect the other person, and if you know who you are, and you take the time to learn about who the other person is, and if you share values, that is a good path to be in a position to potentially have a relationship, if you're interested.
Right, exactly. That's a big one, because a trend that I'm seeing with men is that they use porn as a substitute for sex, and hence relationships. And so I was just wondering your thoughts on that type of trend, is because I can't imagine that that's a good long-term plan.
No, it's a technology where it's a gift and it's a curse depending on how you use it. Now, men are visual, so listen, you don't have to go to a porn website. Go on to Instagram, and you'll see a lot of young women just here it is, guys. And so the guys are going to get off on that, and it's understandable because their hormones are raging. But what can happen, I think, and I'm not a doctor or a psychotherapist or anything, is you can get desensitized, or your level of expectation is, hey, I want to date a pole dancer or an Instagram model or a fitness model or bust, or that's it. And then they don't realize when they look in the mirror that they're 25 pounds overweight and they've been sitting on the couch watching hockey or whatever, that what do they have to offer? So I think people, men and women, but particularly men, have to get real about what their expectations are and what the reality is.
Mhm.
Who am I? What do I have to offer? What do I want from the other person? What are the values? And then, with looks, of course you want to have somebody that you're attracted to, but if you get to know somebody, you get to know a woman the right way, their beauty can blossom like a beautiful flower, if you will, once you get to know them. And I think it's that way for any person. Once you get to know somebody, their beauty can come out, maybe on surface or through the digital format. You're not going to see, they're not going to be exactly what you were looking for, or you have a certain type. But I think it's good to be open-minded, because I have found, for me personally, that when I had this kind of locked in list, sometimes it would backfire, and I ended up dating really successful relationships with women who didn't fit what I had in my mind's eye in terms of the mold and what I really wanted. And I think that's actually a good thing. And I ended up, what I getting though, was kind of I had in my mind's eye, but I got to date around and kind of realize, okay, what really works for me, and organically found the partner that's my life partner now, and who I found through online dating.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I can tell you that story if you want to hear it
let's
real
hear the
quick.
story.
So I was I had been in a long time relationship. We broke up. I started online dating. I had it down to a science. I was on Match, and that's all I did. And I would go out. I would do a couple of email, bang bang, and then offered a phone call, because it's a different exchange of energy when you have a phone call, and then meet up for a coffee or a drink, and then see how it goes from there. Now, my wife was online for 3 days. She had a free Match weekend thing. She was getting a divorce, and she winked at me, and I read her profile, and I asked her a question, and she responded. I mentioned something in the profile, and I said, here's my number. Why don't we have a phone call? Invariably, the woman then will give you her number if she's interested. And she said, no, let's just meet. And I'm like, but my rule is I have to hear your voice on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to myself, she seems pretty nice, and she's not been doing this a long time. She's just on this. So I made up the rule. I can break it.
Yeah.
So we met, and now we're married 12 years, and we have a
12
child.
years. Well, I
Yep.
would say dating's changed a lot in 12 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, human nature hasn't, though. Human nature hasn't. The tactics of dating have changed, but people are people, and that hasn't changed. That doesn't change. It's like a classic story. It's a story that works set in the 1800s can work today also. Star Wars is like a Western. So what's changed is the technology, not humanity, and how people can relate to each other. If you want to just follow the technology and go into the whole AI and transhumanism, sure, you can do that. But if you want to be an authentic person, you have to really get a grasp on, okay, who am I, and how do I work with this new world that's out there that has all this different technology and way to meet and interact with people? Sure, you got to be flexible. You don't want to be like your father or grandfather, but you have to still be a person. Ultimately, it comes down to you and if you're authentic or not, because that's what's going to, if you're a guy, women are going to be attracted to you if you're confident, not arrogant, if you're authentic, if you're generous, if you're kind, and if you're fun.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So let's talk about maybe some of the challenges that men face in the Me Too era with regards to dating.
Well, I think a guy has to listen. I think women, listen, there's never been a better time for men to be men, because this is a time where men can be whoever they want to be. But it's also a time where it's never been less clear who men really are. And whereas women have been on a very straight path to long overdue recognition and not just rewards, but achievement, men are at a crossroads because they're not sure what is expected of them. For whatever reason, that's just the way it is. And I think with the Me Too movement, a guy could be a good guy, and he's like, wow, why is everybody yelling at me? Men have to listen. because women have been kept down by men predominantly in a patriarchal society and culture for not just a year or 2 years or 10 years or 100 years, for centuries.
Right.
So it's all happening very fast now.
Mhm.
Men have to listen, say, okay, what is going on out there? And you see with Roe versus Wade and all of that stuff, it's like, wow, women really have gotten the short end of the stick, and now they're pushing forward. And women have their own challenges in terms of how do we handle all this newfound power? Are we guys that are women, or are we something different? Are we better versions of women? And I think it's a challenge for both men and women to really take a look inside and say, you know, who am I and how do I deal with this? If you're a good guy and if you're authentic and honest and you respect women, and just be yourself, listen, just be yourself. Some women are going to treat you respectfully. Other women are going to take it out on you because you're a guy. That's just the way it is. That's just, we've got a lot of advantages over the years. Now we're getting some pushback on that. It's okay. This could be the best time ever to be a man. If you're a good guy, if you're a guy's guy, and you treat people respectfully and you have respect for yourself, it can all work out in a really good way, because good guys are in demand now more than ever. And I've interviewed a lot of female dating experts, relationship experts, and they work with women and men. And to a person, the ones who work with women tell me, the women I work with want the guys to be guys. So they want them to come up with a plan. They want them to, I'm not saying take charge, but be proactive. They want them probably, if they ask you out, pick up the check on the first date and get over it and take it from there. But they're not asking for guys to take care of everything. They're saying they want men, and they don't want to roll over guys, because then they're not going to respect you. They want a man to be a man in the best sense of the word. That doesn't mean a chauvinist. That doesn't mean a misogynist. That means being a cool guy, comfortable with your own skin, being able to look at the changes out there and say, hey, this could work for everybody. We're making the world better. I got to be part of that. And if you have the right attitude, everything, even today's crazy world, can work for the advantage of any man that's out there. This can be the very best time to be a guy. I know it sounds crazy, but hey, women approach men, young men, all the time. I had to go out and say, hi, my name's Robert, strike up a conversation and all of that. Now women are hitting on guys. They're the aggressives in many situations. Geez, it's pretty easy if you're a guy. Just be a good guy. Don't be a jerk. And women will love you if you have some integrity and you treat them fairly.
Most definitely. Very good answer. So let's say somebody in midlife or older is looking for a relationship, and they don't want to have to mess with casual dating, but you have to start somewhere. You're going to have to, dip your toes in the water. And I'd like to make the analogy of casual dating to shopping, because that's what it feels like. You're having to go out and try different things on. It's exhausting. Maybe you're having to donate your clothes. Somebody else is wearing your clothes. Maybe you're too tired to even go out and try on and shop. And so what would you say to men and women who would like a long-term relationship and kind of are not looking forward to the casual dating component of it?
Well, it's like, you want to be, let's say a young lady wants to be a fitness model, and she has to start by going to the gym the first time. And it's the same thing with dating. You want all the rewards, but you have to put yourself out there. You have to be open. You have to be approachable. You have to realize that every person you meet isn't going to be Mr. or Ms. Wonderful. And you could meet. The bottom line is, if you go out there dating, whether it's on the dating sites or just organically, you could meet some cool people. They could help you in business. I've had women that I dated online, didn't work out, but we kind of liked each other, but there was no sparkles. They introduced me to their girlfriends. Hey, if you're a good guy and you just, treat people, again, respectfully, be open-minded when you get out there dating, no matter what age, you can meet some cool people. If you see it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No harm, no foul. You go out and have a cup of coffee. It's like, hey, you can be nice about it. You don't sit down and say, oh, and run away, which I've seen happen. You just have to, be respectful of yourself, be respectful to the other person, be open-minded, but take the first step and put yourself out there. Treat yourself well, look as good as you can look, have a positive outlook. Don't go out there and complain about your old relationships or why you're not dating and this and that. Be in the now.
Most definitely. And I know a lot of people are turning to online dating, and that's been going on for over a decade. And I know some people are very fatigued with the thought of online dating because I think I read somewhere that like men will swipe on like, I want to say like 50% of the women, and women will swipe on like 5% of the men. And so it's very time consuming, and you waste a lot of your time and your attention, and those are resources you can't get back. So what would you say with regards to strategies of using online dating?
Well, I think for guys, it's not about quantity, it's about quality, where you don't want to just every woman with a pretty smile, yet you start swiping on her and hope for the best. I think you should read up about who this person is and see, am I going to get along with this person? I mean, what do they like to do? Is this in line with my thing? And be a little more, instead of just visual, just and put yourself out there everywhere, cast that wide net. I know it can work, but is that the best use of your time? For women, I like the fact that they're selective and they're doing only 5%. For them, if they're doing only 5%, that's good. I don't know how else to counsel them except be open-minded, have your must-haves, and then keep it short list. The longer the list, sometimes I've noticed, is the longer a woman hasn't been dating, sometimes the longer her list is. And that's no slag on women. That's, again, it's just human nature. Guys, they'll chase anybody who they think they may have a chance with sometimes. It seems like, who's hot, whatever, in their mind. And they're not as discerning. And I think, so knowing that men are visual and women are visual too, but not quite to the extent that men are. Women have other must-haves in terms of if the guy has a job, that's a good thing. If the guy has some cash on hand, that's a good thing. If the guy's fun and likes to travel and do stuff, that's a good thing. And for guys, it's like, is she hot? Is she fun? Does she like the New York Jets or whatever it is? You want to realize that there are going to be differences. Let's make that fun instead of everything has to be exactly the same. And just, again, people have to ease up and have an open mind. With COVID and all the pandemic, the online dating has gotten even bigger, and some people are like dating online and that's it. We've got to take it now, get out there and meet people. And then see what happens. And it's sometimes it's going to work, and other times I had some great relationships developed online. And then I had some I was really high on this person, and it was didn't work out at all. So what I used to do is say, okay, whatever I saw online, whatever I read in the profile, if it's time to meet the person, I multiply it times 0.85. The best I can do is 85% of what my expectation is and what I saw online. And if I get 85%, then I'll work it from there, because there's going to be stuff I don't know about with this person. And I have to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised when I met my wife and some other women before her. I passed 100 a number of times that they were even better than their profiles. So sometimes people don't even know how to put a profile together.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I see, or a trend with people midlife and older, especially with technology, where we can still, go online and look people up or connect with them in social media. You're seeing people reconnect with maybe a high school sweetheart from 20, 30 years ago, when they're like 60. And so, I mean, that is another thing people are doing.
Well, I mean, hey, listen, it's tough. For the older you are, the less comfortable you are with technology. And with Facebook, I'll use people from high schools and all get together for reunions and all that. And you see some friends and some people you didn't know that well, and now you're connected on Facebook. That's fine. You're going to get a relationship out of it? I wouldn't think so. If it's from high school and it's after 20 years later, they're just people that are out there that you knew at a certain point in time, and you can still have a positive relationship with them. But if you're hoping to be dating somebody you knew from high school 20 years later, I would say that's a long shot that would work out, because there's a big world out there. There's billions of people. You don't have to go back to high school.
Very good. So let's move on to marriage for this age group. So I have a question. Maybe you can enlighten us in the audience. Are married people happier and healthier than single people?
I think every situation, it's a great question. I think every situation is different. For me, it's been one of the best things that happened to me. I had a long, fun bachelor career, and I was single for so long that nobody even asked me anymore, are you going to get married? I'd go home for Thanksgiving. Nobody said a word. Everybody else was married and had kids. And then I realized, I said, you know what? I had this epiphany, and it said, I have to make room in my heart for somebody else. That's why I'm not married. and I'm ready. And now I'm going to get married because I just learned that. And I told my mother that Thanksgiving, I said, Mom, I'm going to get married next year. And she said, what? Who's the lady? And I said, I don't know. I haven't met her yet. She said, okay. And sure enough, a year later, I told her my wife's name. I brought my wife to be to Thanksgiving, and we got engaged and we got married a year after that. And it was because of that epiphany that I didn't put myself in a position to make room for somebody else. I had been so focused on myself because I lived alone. I dated different people. I was responsible for everything on my own. And it was good. But after a while, it gets tedious. And then after a while, it's Saturday night and all my friends are with their wives and kids or whatever. And am I going to go out to the bar or something? How sad. So when I connected, I started online dating. When I connected with my wife, finally, we got together. It was interesting because we went out for 3 dates and I said to her, I'm really having a good time. And I've had other relationships that obviously didn't work out because I'm here. Is there anything I need to do as a boyfriend to be a successful boyfriend in this relationship? Because I'm interested. So she put down the fork and next to her plate, and she looked me in the eye and she said, pay attention. And I said, anything else? And she said, no. It was the best advice I ever got from a woman in my life, because women pay attention. They pay attention to the little stuff. They pay attention to the big things, and they pay attention to things about us that can help us. And I'm happier and healthier. I've gone through some health challenges over the last decade or so, like anybody else my age has gone through, but I'm a happier man now. Somehow, one other quick story, I sat down, I realized that my wife-to-be was a vegetarian. And I was just about, when we met, we went to a little cafe in New York City over by the Hudson River. And I was like going to order a cheeseburger. And I said, should I really order a bloody cheeseburger, eat in front of this person who's going to, she just ordered a mushroom. I said, no, I'm not going to. So I didn't. And I never ate beef again. And I went with her, and then I just said, I just didn't. And then it took me a year to get off of poultry, but I stopped eating meat 13 years ago. Oh, wow. 14 years ago, rather. Yep. Wow. So it can happen if you're open, if you're just open to what can be and just anything. And then you start to get, by being that way, you start to get intuitive knowledge or direction or whatever, but you start to get insights because you're being open, you're being more connected to everything that's out there. And it really helps. So I think one of the issues that people have in dating is that they're very close-minded about very specific stuff. I can't have this, they can't have that. And it's all about what cannot be instead of what could be. And I think we have to flip that flip that over and open it up and say, how good can it be? And start from that perspective. And is my heart open? Do I have room for somebody else in here? And if you don't, you don't. But if you do, then you'll probably be in a position where you'll attract that person organically. I know it sounds like way out there, but I got to tell you, love is love. Romance is romance. It's a beautiful thing. And nowadays, dating is like bang, bang, bang. It's like a battle. It's like a job, and it's not a job. It should be the greatest years, the most fun you ever have should be dating that leads to a relationship that, if you're interested, maybe leads to a long-term partnership or a marriage.
Yeah. So I've heard that like men are the gatekeepers for relationships and women are the gatekeepers for sex. And so I think it's just kind of interesting when you hear some of these studies about who's happier or healthier, married versus single. If you read the studies, take them with a grain of salt. They do say that married men are happier than single men. They say that single women are happier than married women. Again, grain of salt, everybody's different in these different types of reports, but I do think it's something to pay attention to and to consider.
It's interesting. I don't know if men are the gatekeepers I think in the most part, women are gatekeepers for the sex. I agree with that. Not in every case, but in many cases. I think the man is not necessarily the gatekeeper of the relationship, because how many men, because women are unhappy and they're in a marriage or a long-term relationship, and they think the guy is supposed to know what aspects of the relationship are not bringing them joy. What are they unhappy about? And they assume, well, the guy's supposed to know because that's what he should do. He should figure out why I'm not happy, instead of saying, hey, we need to talk about this. And I know guys don't want to have the talk. And invariably what happens is men get blindsided and they get dumped after long-term relationships and they don't know why. But there's very good reasons. But there was a lack of communication in terms of, well, maybe the woman mentioned it and maybe she needed to be a little bit more clear about it, that this is really something that's going to impact the potential of keeping the relationship going. So I think women are the gatekeepers of the sex and of the relationship.
Okay. Maybe initially, because women, in their childbearing years, 20 to 40, they're trying to get the most attractive man with the most resources for their offspring. So everybody's competing for that man, right? So a lot of women are looking for that. So I think what I meant to say is initially relationship keepers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also after long term, then, a lot of times the women might feel like, oh, I have to have him because I don't want to get back out there dating. And maybe the guy's a business guy, travels around and all of that, and he's having some fun. So he thinks he can, he thinks he's running a show. So that in a way that would make the man more in a position of a perceived gatekeeper, because he thinks the woman can't do better than him because he's been out there working, and maybe she's working, maybe she isn't. And it's tough raising kids for both partners.
Most definitely. So another trend that I'm seeing amongst the middle-aged and older is the together but separate. You hear people who are like, you know what, you keep your house, I'm keeping my house. We can be married, live in different states, live in different towns. I mean, I'm not saying this is a majority, but it is a trend that I'm seeing where people, they want a part-time spouse, a part-time companion. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, there's not enough love in the world. So whatever works for people is fine. Is it for me? And for all of this stuff, I can only speak from my own experience and talking to other people and interviewing a lot of people and experts in the field, but it wouldn't work for me. I want to be in the same bedroom, in the same bed with my partner. And, somebody doesn't feel good, they want to go sleep in the other room or watch TV all night or read a book or something. Who cares? If you're together, you're together. That's the main thing, that your hearts are together. Physically, do you have to be in the same bed every night? I guess you don't. I had a woman I was dating who was divorced, and she insisted that she have a separate room than her partner. And I had never heard of that before at the time. Now I hear it all the time. And I was like, all right, but that's not how I grew up. And that was not my expectation. And I've never had that. Anytime I've lived with somebody, we lived in the same bedroom and slept in the same bed. And that's just what works for me. But of course, there's all of those, instances where for an evening or this or that, it doesn't work. And if people say, hey, I don't like the way you use the bathroom, or I don't want you to snore, or I want to sleep in that other room, and they still have everything else going for them, and they're in love, and they share love, and they project out love, fine. That's whatever works for them.
So another trend or model on whatever works for them that we're seeing, people being more honest about open marriages, polyamory, they call it swinger lifestyle. Whereas, maybe in the past it was more secretive or people didn't talk about it. You're seeing more and more of that kind of becoming, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's definitely on the table as for people in long-term relationships or in midlife. So what are your thoughts about that trend?
Well, I can understand it, because I don't know if humanity was meant to have just one single partner. I think culturally we've evolved that way for many centuries, but is it the way it has to be? I would say it doesn't have to be that way. And again, whatever works. I think there's some challenges with it beyond the societal challenges and the perception of it. There's, if it's one woman and two guys, if you're like letting another guy do your wife while you're there, or she goes off and like is sleeping with another guy. I don't know any guys who like, that's cool. I don't know any men who'll put up with that. For a woman to bring another woman in and with a guy in a threesome, and it's two women and a guy, any guy would love that. And some women would go along with it and other women won't, of course, which is fine. But I think for men, that a strange guy with your wife, that's a deal breaker, because it's like a cheating thing, where for a guy, for the most part, if your woman sleeps with another guy, has sex with another guy, that's a deal breaker in almost any instance. With a woman, if a guy has an stronger emotional connection and confidentiality and intimacy with another woman, and it may not be consummated with intercourse, that's just to me, from what I've heard, as dangerous and as lethal as a man, a woman sleeping with another guy. So the infidelity, the definition of infidelity has some elasticity to it. So if you can make it work, whereas a threesome, 3 men, I interviewed guys on my show, 3 guys with a baby, and it works for them. And I was like, well, how do you decide what do you do on the weekend and all of that? And they're like, well, he wants to watch TV and we want to go out, or whatever. If that's, again, not enough love in the world. If you can make it work, you can make it work. When it's 3, is always another part of a who's number 3 type of thing. So it's doable, but it ain't easy.
Right. So I think it's interesting because you're even seeing it on online dating apps now. You have that option, and you could join a couple, or you could be a couple looking for a third person. So it's becoming more talked about, where people would break up over these things. Maybe they're like thinking, well, maybe how can we make this work? So just an interesting trend.
I think another way that could go, Lisa, is where you have couples where one couple goes away with another couple, and then all the fun begins. I think that's probably a little easier because it's like a little easier to manage. I haven't done that myself, and I'm not really interested in it, but I've heard of that happening where it's a couples get together, 4 people, instead of just bringing in a third person just for sex. So again, to me, whatever people want to do, if they're not hurting anybody and that's how they get their kicks, good for them.
Right. So another trend that I'm seeing for this age group is that we call gray divorces. Can you touch on what that is and how that impacts others?
Well, I assume what you're saying is people who've been married for like 20 plus years decide to say that's enough. Because I think it's totally understandable, because life has moved very quickly. Partners outgrow each other. Maybe they don't even like each other after a certain amount of time. And it's understandable because people grow and evolve in their own ways. I was in a relationship. I started going into doing things like Reiki and hypnotherapy, and I stopped, with alcohol and stuff like that. And my partner was not into that stuff. She was not judging me on anything, but she was going in her own direction. And ultimately, there's a peaceful parting because you're going down different paths. Can it happen? Of course, it can happen. And I think people are already also realizing that life, you go around in this incarnation once, in this body once. Maybe you live a whole bunch of different lives, so who knows? But if they're not happy and they say, you know what, I got another 20 good years left, and this guy's not doing it for me anymore, I don't even like him. Yeah, it's totally understandable to make a break of it. Now, hopefully, when people do that, they can be amicable, because after all, you were in love with that person enough to get married. And if that's the case, hopefully you have enough respect for each other to recall that time, even though you may have some rancer now, that people are people, and people grow and they change and they make mistakes, whatever. I'm not condoning bad behavior, but I think the idea of the silver divorces, or gray divorces, is totally understandable. It's going to be happening more and more.
Most definitely. I know that I was looking at some statistics that 70% of all divorces are initiated by the woman. Can you speak as to why that's so?
Yeah, I think we touched on it earlier, where a lot of women are basically putting out communication signals that things aren't working out, and they don't feel that the guy is listening or paying attention. Whereas the women pay attention to everything, and they'll point out things in a relationship, and guys say, oh, she's nagging me. But really, they're trying to do what they can to make the relationship better. So it's all about your perspective and your openness to read, to be available, number one, if you're a man, and to listen to not just the words, but the situation and the vibe, what's going on with her. How is her day? She seems distant. She's unhappy. Women will always pick that up. My mood changes at 10 minutes. My wife's on it. Like, what's the matter? She just knows. And I think women, for the most part, they're so intuitive. They're so present. They're so on it that they always pick up on that because they're paying attention. And men, they pay attention. They're ego driven. And we pay attention about things that matter to us. We constantly talk about us. And sometimes we ask the wife what's going on. And we listen, but maybe we're not actively listening, or they say, I have a problem with this. And we say, here's how you solve the problem. And we think we're being a hero, but we're not, because we're not listening, because we weren't asked to solve the problem. We were asked to listen to the problem. So I think more and more women are saying, instituting the breakups and the divorces because the men aren't paying attention. And I think maybe also the women are evolving in a different way. And maybe the men aren't evolving, and maybe it's not their fault because they're under such pressure, work and everything else. And also the changing roles of men and the expectations that a lot of guys are like, I don't know what to do and what's expected of me. Because, it wasn't like this when I was for mom and dad. Dad went to the work and mom made me pancakes, and now it's all different. Mom's going to work and dad's making pancakes. I don't know what to do. So it's a very different world. So there's a lot of pressure on men to really navigate all of this change. Women have a great opportunity now. But as I said, this is the best time. This can be the best time ever to be a guy because there's so much available to you. You can be whoever you want to be. Yet again, it's more unclear who men really are. So it's up to us to define ourselves, to go inside, to know who we are, what we have to offer, to be authentic and put it out there. And if we do that, women will love us.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't think we're ever going to go back to the 1950s housewife. I don't think that's going to happen. Women have become too educated, too independent. And so they're not settling or putting up with stuff that maybe their grandmother settled and put up with. And, women get resentful. They don't want to be their husband's mother and they don't want to be their husband's maid. And so a lot of them are like, you know what? I can do better on my own. I can, and a lot of women do better alone than men do better alone. That's my personal observation and opinion. Especially like with remarriage, you see men, they get remarried right away. They move on quickly. They get the next girlfriend because they can't sit with being alone. Whereas women, they savor that aloneness because it gives an opportunity for them to focus on themselves instead of a relationship.
I agree with you 100%, Lisa. I think you're absolutely right and I know so many women, they have their network of friends where they get together, and where guys are a little more, for the most part, like lone wolves, and we don't share our pain with our friends, our male friends, and we go out on our own, trudging around and trying to meet a new woman. And the heart is a lonely hunter, as they say. And sometimes it's tough for a guy. Hey, listen, it's very tough for women too to get back out in the dating scene. But a lot of times you see groups of women, they get together, they go out in groups. Once guys hit 40 or something, you don't see them. Maybe they're golfing and they go out for drinks after, or they get together for somebody's birthday for a steak dinner or something like that. But in the most part, I think women are a little more, have more of a community feel about their friends in their kind of universe, and men are a little bit more singular, a little more, and it's tough for guys. And that's why I think you're 100% right, where guys on the rebound, bang, I'm married, I'm divorced, I'm married again. Whereas women will take the time, work on themselves, and then maybe they end up being with somebody completely different than what they had before. But you know what the good news is? Women are evolving, they're learning, they're getting dimensionalized. I think it's great.
Yeah. And you do definitely see it up, when you get like 65 and up, you do see a lot more single women, alone women, because they do live longer. They do have those relationships with other women that they can, they can get their emotional support sometimes through those friendships. Whereas, men are always, looking for
drinking on the couch, watching the game, right?
Yeah. So it is interesting to think about, some people don't want to get married again. That is another trend. They've been there, they've done that. They, now they just want to maybe have the companionship. They married for love, or they married for money. Now they're in a phase in their life where like, now I just want companionship. I've also seen that with a friend of mine who's an older lady. She had nursed her husband who was sick with, cancer. And, that was just a difficult time for her to go through. And now he passed away, unfortunately. And now she has time for herself, and she's not interested in getting married again and taking care of another sick person. Not now, so, maybe she'll be open to it later, but yeah, that's another trend you have to think about with aging and health problems that can arise. And
that's a good point.
I do know, like, I've read articles where, like, the husband leaves the wife when she got breast cancer because he can't handle her illness. where the women might actually, stay with the husband and fall more deeply in love with him through his illness. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not putting all men in that camp, but there can be some shallowness with illness in relationships.
That's true. It works. And I know your intention is correct there. I have a friend and his wife was sick with some debilitating disease that she kind of withered away over a 10-year period. He was with her the whole time. And she basically at the end gave him the blessing, like, I'm going to find somebody and send them to you. And sure enough, a year later, he made this fantastic woman who's a healer. They're both friends of mine. And it's like the fantastic thing, good thing happened, but he did a really good thing too. He stuck with her the entire time. So every situation's different, but I understand what you're saying about many times, the guys a lot of times are older in a relationship. They don't live as long. So the woman ends up being a caretaker in many instances. And, men don't appreciate the fact that there's another reason why women are so amazing, because that's something they do and they don't talk about or ask for a medal or anything. It's like, give us some respect and realize that this is what we're doing. And we want to, you have to let women do their thing. And if you let them do their thing and you give them their independence and you don't try to squash them or control everything, invariably, if you're a good dude and you're a loving person, they'll stick with you, or they'll come back to you, or they'll come to you. It's all good. That's why I keep saying it's the best time ever to be a man if you're a guy's guy.
If you're a good guy and a guy's guy, most definitely.
That's right.
So we're getting here toward the end of our conversation. Do you have any final thoughts on future dating, marriage trends for this midlife age group and up?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, and we've touched on all of them, but let me just summarize. One is, if you got to be in it to win it, number one. So you got to put yourself out there and put your best face on, and you got to prepare before you go out there, know what you're looking for, know who you are and what you have to offer, and have a couple of deal breakers, but then be open and realize that the most important thing, you want to have chemistry and you want to share values, and just be open and let it fly from there. The second thing is, I think before, and I think this is I hate to say it, but there's always positives of chaotic situations. One of the things the pandemic did, it gave people the time, whether they used it or not, to go inside and work on themselves. If you want to impact your life and other people and the world in a positive way, learn to go inside. I started meditating full time every single day at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's changed my life in a really positive way, because I know my vibe is different and people have mentioned it to me. And I've added things to it. I do qigong, I do a whole bunch of stuff, exercise stuff that I do that I didn't do before in a whole different way. And I've never felt better and have really helped me. The point is, and forgive me for digressing, is that work on yourself, go inside, do something for yourself every day. Put the phone far enough away from your bed so you don't go to bed. I stare at the screen, I go to sleep, I wake up, I stare at the screen. Put the screen aside. I get up, I meditate for a half hour. I feed my cat. I put stuff out for my son. And then I pick up the phone and see what's going on. Unless there's something urgent that I know I have to check first thing in the morning. It makes a huge difference. So it's about loving yourself. And when you do that, you put yourself in a position where you can better love everybody else and be a better partner and be a better person to hang with, a better friend. Because in relationships also, don't think of it in the end game. Just have fun, be present, have a good time. Dating should be a fun sport. And the romance, think about the romance, make it fun, do little gestures, have a good time with it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You're here, we're here, we made it through, we're here right now. Be appreciative of what we have. I'm so thankful I'm here with you, Lisa. I so enjoyed this and being able to talk about things that hopefully can help some people out there forgive me if I sound preachy, but it's all about, it's not enough love in the world, but we got to love ourselves first.
Oh, that's so good. That's a great final message to end on, because I think I agree with you 100%. There's not enough love. There's not enough of that going around. And I'm hoping that, because of COVID and that time alone, that we can, the sexes can work their ways back to each other, because it seems like there's just such a divide right now.
Even if we have to wear a hazmat suit, right?
Exactly, for sure. Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate you coming on my channel today and dropping your pearls of wisdom.
Well, listen, it's just from my guy perspective. So what works for everybody else out there is what works for them. I totally respect that. All I can do is speak from my experience and say thank you for listening. That's all.
Yes, yes. Thank you guys. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. Maybe even Robert will jump on there and provide some feedback if you have a question for him. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be alerted to when the next video drops. Thanks for watching.